Atomic gigantification was a sweeping Japan nation when along came a dude with an ultra attitude, a Kamen rider who's the greatest kicker of Japan. And of all, man, life's too short now, baby, to not talk big now, baby.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to a brand new episode of Kaiju Conversation. I'm your host, Elijah, and joining me as always, my lovely co-host and editor.
Hello, I'm Rex.
And we are back at it again for another lovely, amazing episode coming right at you. We are now officially in July as of the upload for this episode.
But not the recording.
Not the recording, because between your scheduling conflicts, my vacation, and just the fact that we have been weekly for the last 3 months.
Accidentally.
Yeah, because April and May were planned. June was not supposed to be weekly, but it kind of fell into place.
Yeah.
Minus 1 week. We did have a week off, did we not?
I believe so. I did.
Yeah. Yeah, because we did the Kaiju and Cowboys interview the last week of May. Then we had the first week of June off. And then we did Princess Blade. And then we did Shin Kamen Rider. No. We didn't have, we had a week off of recording, but we still had episodes coming every week.
Oh, yeah, I know.
So, that's pretty good. And here we are in a new month. This is the beginning of our Kaiju month in celebration of G-Fest, which is occurring the second week of July, that I will be attending and paneling at. And probably streaming, if we're going to be honest. It'll either be a Kaiju Conversation Live, or a Kaiju Kim, or a Monster Island Film Vault, or a Kaiju Ramen stream. I don't know. But I definitely know all of those are potential candidates to what I will be doing.
Your presence is unpredictable these days.
It is, because I ended up doing 2 streams for All Monsters Attack. I did a Kaiju Conversation Live, and then I did a Kaiju Weekly stream. So we'll see what happens. We very well could do a Kaiju Weekly stream on Sunday celebrating G-Fest, talking about it, and then maybe doing an after party on Kim's stream, or whatever, or maybe just a hype. I might do one at the beginning of G-Fest as a hype for Kaiju Conversation Live. I don't know yet. But yeah, we're at the 4th. This will be 4. July is our 4th month of being weekly, because we do have episodes planned every week this month. In honor of G-Fest, we have labeled it Kaiju Month, so finally, we'll be talking about Kaiju, like our name suggests.
It feels like it's been forever.
It really does. Like, when you break it down, and we did this the other day, when you break down our episodes, we've only talked about Kaiju 7 times, I believe. As of this recording, it'll be 7 times. As the main topic this year. And it's weird because this is the year of Kaiju Conversation that we've been dubbing it, between our monthly live streams, our weekly uploads, our bonus episodes, our bonus content and whatnot. We've been producing a lot of content.
Yeah.
Most of it's not been about Kaiju.
Yeah.
It's been about Tokusatsu, which has been interesting, and I am excited to see where this goes. Obviously, this month you're going to get 4 Kaiju-filled episodes talking about different subjects. Mm-hmm. Which I'm excied to see where this leads.
We've got an interesting selection.
we do. We have a very wide variety, which I'm excited about. But you'll just have to stay tuned to see what all we talk about this month, as we never like to reveal what we have in our cards. But starting off, I think we've got a pretty interesting selection here for this first one. But before we go into that, we gotta do our typical room service cleanup, housekeeping, exactly. So Rex, how have you been, man? We're actually recording this a day earlier than we typically do on our schedules.
Yeah.
So it feels a little weird because it's been less than a week since we've recorded. So, what's happened in the less than a week that we've been not podcasting?
Not too much in particular. I mean, today I went out for a nice walk with some friends.
I saw you posted on your personal accounts a video of a turtle. And I had to reply Gamera.
Yeah, don't worry. I had that thought too.
Or maybe Toto. Maybe.
Toto. Yeah, Toto. I say Toto.
Speaking of turtles, I've thought about getting some pet turtles.
Oh, yeah.
Because all you have to do is like once a week clean out their what is that, tank, I guess? Yeah, their tank, their ecosystem, whatever you would want to dub it.
Their habitat.
Their habitat. There's a good one. You only have to do that, and then you just throw some food and they just kind of fend for themselves.
Yeah, I've considered getting like a blue tongue lizard myself. I think that they'd be nice. And the only reason is
I would hate, because I'm never home. I'm really never home. Because I'm working. Actually, this week, my final worked hours is going to be for this pay period, which is 2 Saturdays.
Mm-hmm.
So last week Saturday through Friday, and then this last Saturday up until today, for me, which is Friday. I think it's Friday for you as well. I think we're actually in the same time zone, or same day finally.
Yes, we are.
So from last Saturday to today, I worked 106 hours.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
which
100. Jesus.
That's 53 hours a day. That's over 2 straight days. That's let's see, 24 times 3 would be 68. So that's about 11 hours shy. 10 or 8. 106, so that'd be 4 and 8. So 12 hours. That's 12 hours shy of 3 full days.
Jesus.
Yeah. I have a very nice paycheck, but I've not been at home. And when I did have days off, I was either running around getting errands done for G-Fest, working on cleaning my car, buying stuff for my house, cleaning my house, or working on my short film or whatnot. So, because of how busy I am, I don't really have time for a cat or a dog or a bird. But a turtle would, turtles don't really need that TLC. They have their own home. They walk around in their own home. They're pretty well happy wherever they're at, as long as they have food and water and a nice spot to bask in some heat. So, sorry, I detracted things from what you were talking about, but we were talking about turtles, and I would absolutely name my turtle Toto.
As would I, if I ever had one. I have a Toto or Gamera.
Or Tippy. Isn't that that's what the turtle that the boy in Gamera the Giant Monster named his turtle, who he thought turned into Gamera, right?
In the dub?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, I feel like he had a different name for the turtle in the Japanese version, I think. I could be crazy.
But that would be it would either be Toto or what the kid called his turtle in the first film, which would be a deeper cut, I feel like, because nobody really talks about that kid.
Yeah. But they do talk about the Kennys.
They do. So what else have you been up to, Rex? Any tokusatsu you've watched, or?
Yeah, I've been watching a bit of Ultraman Max and V3. Again, haven't had too much time to watch them, but still trying to make some time for them here and there.
Gotcha.
I got actually watched the first of the Akio Jisoji directed episodes of Max, so that was pretty
nice. How was it compared to like Kaneko's and Miike's?
I would say that the first episode directed by Miike, and that Akio Jisoji directed episode are probably the two best of the show so far, like in terms of direction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like for Kaneko, he does have like one or two episodes left that I need to watch, but so far I actually feel like this might be his most plain kaiju work, to be honest.
I mean, to be fair, he's only worked on 4 kaiju movies and then the Max stuff.
Yeah, but this is just like, I feel like it's the weakest like, standard episodes of the show so far.
Oh,
At least so far, I've just found them like fine,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the first episode or two that he did, which were like the first 2 episodes, they were pretty alright from what I remember.
Mm-hmm.
The Antler episode he directed, I think, was okay. It did have Asagi from the Gamera trilogy in it, which was cool.
Oh, that is really cool.
Yeah, she makes a guest appearance in that episode. Ultra 7 also makes a guest appearance in one episode as well, which was cool.
Spoiler alert.
Oh, sorry.
Interesting. So, real quick, you brought up how it's kind of his weakest kaiju work.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of feel bad because, like, I feel like with the Gamera trilogy, he got better as he produced those movies. The Guardian of the Universe is good. Legion is great.
And then
Iris is amazing.
Incredible. Yeah.
But then, personally, GMK is okay.
I love GMK.
Maybe it's good. I have to rewatch it. Maybe it's good. But I, for one, am not a fan of Toho's studio meddling. I feel like that really hurt the film.
I do agree that Ghidorah... I think it's more Mothra who fits the least. I actually think Ghidorah kind of fits okay in the film.
Ghidorah feels more natural. I still am not a fan of that iteration, though.
Mm-hmm. I'm fine with it, but like I definitely think that it would have been better if they went with Anguirus and Varan, obviously. I think everyone kind of agrees.
Yeah. Yeah.
That the original plan made more sense.
Yeah.
But for what it's worth, I think the film still works really well. I think it's one of like the best Ghidorah designs. I think the Mothra design is also one of the best. And, I really do like the 2 leads of GMK as well.
Now, let me ask you this. Would you, because I feel like I would put GMK below the 3 Gamera films. Again, I have to rewatch it. I haven't watched it probably in 2 to 3 years. Mm-hmm. But I feel like I might put GMK below his trilogy of Gamera.
You see, for me, here's the thing. GMK is one of the movies I've watched the most amount of times in my life.
Right.
Like, it is the only movie that it comes second to is Final Wars and maybe Jurassic Park. That's it. Those are the only 2 movies that I've seen that I've maybe seen more times than GMK.
Not even like Alien or Aliens?
No, I've seen GMK so many times, like through my childhood. Because that one and Final Wars used to just be on repeat, basically, every couple of weekends.
You were that edgy kid. You were an edgy kid.
I mean, I was an edgy kid, but like...
Still are.
GMK and Final Wars weren't because they were edgy. It was just because they had tons of cool action.
Fair enough. So... I don't want to dive too much into it because this isn't talking about any of the Gamera films or GMK, but where would you put GMK below the trilogy or would it rest in between one of them?
Again, I've got that nostalgia, so like it would be either it would be honestly with Iris, maybe a bit below Iris, because I do think Iris is like a better executed film.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, visually, I'd say both Gamera 2 and Gamera 3 are better executed than GMK. Like GMK has some like a fair lot of composite shots that haven't aged too gracefully, for example.
Right.
I don't think they're too bad. They're like a massive improvement over, say, Godzilla 2000s.
Right.
But even still, they're still not great, nonetheless, some of those shots.
Yeah. Okay. And then but you would put like his Ultraman Max episodes as probably bottom of his kaiju work.
Yeah. I don't think they're bad. It's just, I think they're
bland.
Unremarkable.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Whereas Mike and Jisoji's episodes stood out a lot more so far. Even the Mike episode I wasn't really huge on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that one still, I think, was a lot more memorable.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, in saying that, the Antler episode and all that were still... They're decently solid Ultraman episodes, nonetheless.
Right. Okay. And since then, Kaneko hasn't done any kaiju work, if I remember correctly.
Not that I'm aware of. He might have directed some episodes of, like, Neo Ultra Q. I could be wrong.
I don't think he did.
I could be wrong.
I really want to say that since then, because, I mean, he wanted to do a Gamera film, obviously, but that got canned, but...
Yeah. Oh, he did Ultra Q Dark Fantasy.
Oh, he did?
And, like... some, like, 40th anniversary Ultraman special.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah. Outside of Max and V3, I also recently, just the other day, watched a Takashi Miike film, actually, speaking of him.
I'm trying to think
I'm
trying to think what you might have watched.
Oh, yeah.
Can you give me a subtle hint?
Oh, subtle hint. It is well regarded.
Okay, so it's going to either be Ichi the Killer, Audition, or... It's got to be one of those two.
I will not confirm nor deny.
I'm hot, aren't I?
Have a guess at what film you may think it is.
I have a 50-50 shot here. What do I get if I guess this right?
Absolutely nothing.
Perfect. I love that. I feel like you've already watched... You've watched Ichi. You've talked about Ichi. I don't know if you've watched Audition.
Is Audition your final guess?
I'm going to guess Audition.
Well, you are correct.
Let's go.
But I have not seen Ichi the Killer, no.
Oh, you haven't?
No.
I guess you've just read up on it, because I swear I've heard you talk about it.
Oh, I've wanted to watch Ichi the Killer for some time. I've mentioned it to some people. Like, I've probably talked about it with you. I've definitely talked about it in, like, the server. So,
huh?
Yeah, I watched Audition. Rented it on Apple TV, of all things.
Was it the first time you've seen it?
Yes.
Okay.
Never seen it before.
So I was right there. What'd you think?
Oh, I really liked it. I really, really liked it.
See, I remember I was telling one of our mutual friends that I'm kind of in the mood to say I refuse to watch anything that is like mainstream Miike besides One Missed Call. I feel like that's the only one I've watched that like everybody knows that Miike did. Which is exclusive to Ichi the Killer, Audition, and One Missed Call. But
why do you refuse to watch those?
I don't know. I kind of want to just watch his other crazy stuff before I watch his normal.
Oh, before. I don't know if I'd call Audition or Ichi the Killer normal. There's kind of a reason Miike is known for both of those films.
This is true.
If anything, One Missed Call is probably the most normal out of the three.
This is true. And, yeah. So I've watched most of his stuff that is Toku related.
Mm-hmm.
I've watched like Full Metal Yakuza, One Missed Call, Blade of the Immortal, the first Great Yokai War, both Zebraman movies. And I think I've watched a handful of others.
Right.
I don't have my stuff in front of me, so I couldn't confirm nor deny. So I've watched a little bit.
I've seen a few of his films as well.
So
I've been trying to watch more of his work recently. And yeah, I'm actually quite enjoying it. Like these last two Miike films I've watched, Audition and Katakuri's, have probably been my favorites, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Huh. See,
That they're also some of his wilder works too. Oh, yeah, I'd say Audition. It's a lot more restrained than you'd expect from Miike.
Yeah.
But it also makes the ending a lot more impactful, I'd say.
Okay.
Because like most of the film, like the first hour or so is largely a drama.
Right. Okay. Interesting. So,
and Jun Kunimura plays a prominent role in it, so that's always good to see.
In Audition?
Yeah. He's not the main character. He's like
the side character?
Yeah, he's like the main character's like best friend.
Okay.
Or like co-worker or something.
Well, now I'm kind of thinking about watching it because I love watching Jun Kunimura.
Oh, he's always a great face to see in Japanese films.
He is.
Oh, and Kanji Suda's in it too.
Really?
Yeah, he plays a bartender. I don't think he gets any lines, but he's just there for a couple scenes.
Hey man, it's better than nothing.
Yeah.
So
again, another face I love seeing.
Right. Besides Audition and what you've listed, anything else, or has that been pretty much it?
I think that's more or less it, other than one little film that you were supposed to watch that I hope you watched.
Let's see here. Well, I guess we can move on to what I've been doing for the last few days.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I've been working a ton. I've also recently got a shift change at work. So now I get to leave work early on Sundays, which means I am starting to live stream with my fellow Kaiju Ramen members. We do Kaiju Weekly, as some of you might know. The podcast Kaiju Weekly was a weekly podcast that we kind of have stole their thunder for the last few months.
Hell yeah.
But our friends Travis and Michael ran that podcast. And about 6 months ago, I want to say, they ended it. And that was because Travis was running Kaiju Weekly, Kaiju Ramen, Henshin Men podcast, which was a weekly podcast talking about Kamen Rider 1971. And also trying to have a social media presence on Kaiju Weekly, his personal account, the Henshin Men, and the Kaiju Ramen accounts. So that was a lot of work.
Yeah.
And then Michael was doing Kaiju Weekly, Kaiju Ramen, and the Power Trip podcast, which he co-hosts with Nathan Marchand, who is the co-host of Henshin Men. So they were doing a lot of work. And on top of that, Michael is a member of Collect All Monsters. So they do, I think it's monthly live streams. So he was doing that. And then on top of that, just that social media presence there. So they were doing a lot. And Kaiju Weekly was the oldest of their projects.
Yeah.
And they had passed episode 100. They had got their groove, but they were also starting to slip on that as they were working on their other projects. And they just agreed to end the podcast. They ended the podcast and it was put on ice. While that was put on ice, they were able to focus more on Power Trip, Henshin Men, and Kaiju Ramen. Travis, however, decided to retire from podcasting altogether, so Nathan took control of Henshin Men, whereas Michael continues Power Trip and Collect All Monsters, which even though it's not a podcast, it's still a monthly live stream.
Mm-hmm.
Recently, we at Kaiju Ramen have been trying to figure out what else we can do besides web articles and magazines, and being interviewed for the magazine, about the magazine, what more we could do to produce content.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those is live streams and videos. So Travis and all of us thought about revitalizing Kaiju Weekly, except it would be rebranded into Kaiju Weekly News. So it's a weekly live stream on the Kaiju Ramen YouTube channel where we go over the news for that week. So now I'm going to be a regular on the show, talking mostly about movies and TV, as that's, I would like to think, is my kind of expertise in. We have like our main headline, which this last week, this is going to date the episode, but we talked about, let's see, what was it? It was the Skull Island anime trailer.
Oh, yeah.
And we covered other news. But we have our main headline. We have our movies and TV section, which is what what I oversee. I keep track of all the new releases, the announcements, whatnot. We have a section about toys and collectibles that Michael runs. He's the head of that one. And then we have our our video games and comics section, which is what Nathan and Travis focus on. Mm-hmm. And so we all kind of help take turns and run the live stream. We talk about the news and just have a good time. It's about an hour and a half to 2 hours. That's kind of what we aim for when it comes to the runtime. So I did that. And then on my days off, like I mentioned, I was cleaning my car, getting ready for G-Fest, and working on my G-Fest short film. This week has been heavily focusing on getting audio. So I had my actor come into my studio here, and we did some ADR, some line reads and some noises. I've been recording some foliage sounds, some sounds for the kaiju, and so this upcoming week is going to be focusing on finalizing the video edits before I do my special effects, and doing all the audio, mixing that down to a T. Hopefully I can have it done by the end of this coming week, because it's due on the 30th of June, which is about 2 weeks away. So I'm getting pretty close. And then after I get my audio and video done, hopefully within this coming week, I have some particle effects I got to do, and then some brief animation as well. The particle effects I'm sure I can get done pretty quick, and then it's just the animation. So it's gonna get pretty close, but I'm pretty excited. I've got a poster, I've got a synopsis ready. It's all filmed. It's just some animation, editing the audio and editing the video, and it's pretty much done. So pretty excited. I'm very happy with this short film. Recently I've been having like a creative just desire. Look at our podcast here. We've been producing content every week, which makes me feel good. I'm working on this short film. I'm doing the Kaiju Weekly News live streams. I appeared on a surprise Chill with Kaiju Kim stream. I cameoed in there for about 30 minutes, which was pretty fun. Just saying, if you watch that stream, so that stream was going on while I was at work, but I went to lunch about, when the stream was about halfway over, and I hopped in. So I had my laptop. I was just streaming like my laptop camera, pretty very basic setup. I was just chilling, having a good time. And we were talking, having a good time. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw one of my coworkers walk in and saw that I was on the computer. Now they didn't walk into the room, but they walked up. I was like, okay, that's a little weird. And what I didn't know is they went and dared one of my coworkers. Now keep in mind, I'm actually the boss.
Oh, no.
I'm the boss, so they're my employees, but I call them my coworkers. So I'm live streaming. I've got my webcam on, like my mic's on. I'm chatting. I'm having a jolly good time.
Yeah.
So my coworker is dared to come in and scare me. So there is a 15-second clip, and what's funny is you had Kim, Nathan, Travis, Michael, and Danny all on the stream. So I had 5 people on the stream plus the people watching. Now, I'm wearing my earbuds, and they have an auto... what would that be called, Rex? You're the audio guy where it filters out background noise?
I don't remember the word for it.
But it has a software...
Noise canceling?
Yes. So it has that software where, like, it cancels out the background noise, which is really nice. So... when this happened, nothing went through. Like, I'm silent, thankfully. But if you watch my window, somebody walks into the room. I jump it's very noticeable I'm jumping. And I turn around and I point at the door and you can hear me say, "Go." But nobody noticed. Nobody noticed that I did this. There was not a comment in the stream. I think Kim does react to it, but she doesn't say anything. Thank God. I would have been so embarrassed. But it was now there is a video of me being jump scared by my coworkers, and it's canon to my fandom interactions. So I don't know how to feel about that one. So, I did that and then prepped for the podcast, and I've been prepping for this upcoming Kaiju Weekly News. I'm also prepping for an upcoming podcast that I'm going to be guest appearing on, hopefully. And, working on the podcast. Oh! Speaking of working on the podcast, we just posted our Shin Kamen Rider episode, right?
Yes.
Which is 3 hours long. And you would think in those 3 hours that we would have covered everything, right? We talked about how we watched it, what we thought of it, news.
You have another thing to add on that.
I have another little thing to add. I forgot to tell you. So, on my first viewing of the film, Shin Kamen Rider, and there's no spoilers here, this is me going. So, when I podcast or when I go to see a Tokusatsu movie, I open my sunroof up, I roll down my front 2 windows, connect my phone to the Bluetooth, as I always do, and I play music from my Pretentious Film Buff Needs His playlist on Spotify. That's what it's called. It's got a little image of Godzilla, the Heisei suit, with Kira Ifukube. Mm-hmm. And it's all music from soundtracks. It's either like instrumentals or it's actual songs. And to Shin Kamen Rider, I was blasting Cruel Angel's Thesis, Masuro Sato music, like the Jet Jaguar Punch Punch song, Give Back the Earth, the Godzilla March.
That's funny. The Jet Jaguar Punch Punch from that song. That's from the singer of that song, the original Kamen Rider fame.
Oh, so. He did?
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that now.
Because after Hongo leaves, it's originally Hongo who sings the song, or his actor. Then after he leaves, it's Masato Shimon, the singer of the Jet Jaguar song, who takes over. Yeah. And he sings like all the end themes as well.
Oh, I love that. That just made it even better. Now here's the thing, though. On my phone, I have it turned up all the way, and I have a surround sound Bose system, so it's really loud. It's got a lot of bass. It's when I drive and I have my music up all the way, my side mirrors vibrate and my rear view mirror vibrates, and I can feel it in my chest.
Yeah.
So as I'm driving to Shin Kamen Rider, which is in the city, I have my windows down, my sunroof open, my phone's turned up all the way, and my car stereo is turned up all the way. I'm blasting Akira Ifukube down the street.
As anyone should.
Right? And like Cruel's Angels Thesis, and like all of that stuff is just blasting.
Yeah.
Now, I'm wearing sunglasses too, because when you're at a stoplight and you're blasting music and your windows are rolled down, there is a strong, strong, strong chance somebody will roll down their window, turn and tell you to turn your music down. They will tell you that you are playing your music too loud and nobody wants to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you wear sunglasses, you can act like you don't see them and you don't have to hear them because the music's too loud. So I'm driving down the street. I'm almost to the theater. I'm like one stoplight and a left turn away. I'm at the stoplight. This car that's been following, or like right next to me for the last like 5 minutes, who's definitely at least heard my bass drop or heard the music, pulls up beside me. And I'm like, I can't turn. I can't look at any vehicles near me, because if I do, they're going to look at me and they're going to be pissed.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm rocking out to, I'm pretty sure it's Akira Ifukube. I want to say it's like the Monster Zero March, or it's from Godor, the Three-Headed Monster or something. Mm-hmm. It's your classic da 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 da. It's your classic Ifukube Godzilla stuff.
Yeah.
And this car, and it's like a white minivan that's I want to say it's like a Honda minivan or something, and the backseat passenger rolls down the window. Now I can see it in the corner of my eye, like I see it happening, and the person, like, arms are hanging out, heads hanging out, they're staring like into my soul.
Yeah.
And they're saying something. I don't know what they're saying because I can't hear them. And if they tell me to turn down I'm not going to turn down my music so I can hear them.
Mm-hmm.
But if I turn and look at them, that means they know that I know they're there.
Mm-hmm.
So then I become an a-hole. But I'm already being an a-hole, so do I want to be like double the a-hole, or do I just want to be like the a-hole who's blasting his music that nobody appreciates? So I took that one. So this girl is screaming at me, and I'm just staring straight, waiting for that light to turn green as I'm blasting Akira Ifukube. And I'm just like, it's going to be over soon. It's going to be over soon. Maybe she was like, is that Godzilla music? And then I would have found my wife. I don't know. But I wasn't going to take that chance. So I took the lesser of the two evils and was blasting Ifukube and ignoring everybody.
Understandable.
And then when the light turned green, I just hit the gas, so like I smoked them.
Of course you did.
I did. In my car named after one of the female characters from Terror of Mechagodzilla. I did. Yeah. So there's an example why people hate me. I blast music. I'm that guy. I'm that guy that you hear at 3 a.m. driving down the neighborhood, and you're laying in bed and you just hear this like boom, 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 boom. And you're like, oh my God, why are they playing their music so loud? It's 3 a.m. I'm that person.
Honestly, there's a lot worse people who do it, so at least you're playing good music.
This is true.
When it's Godzilla and a Cruel Angel's Thesis, I suppose. Dude,
I love blasting a Cruel Angel's Thesis. I on my way here tonight, my best friend was coming back from his girlfriend's. So he's on the opposite end of where I'm driving, but we end up at the same stoplight. And I am blasting Cruel Angel's Thesis as I drive by him. And I'm like, I hope to God he knows this is me. It's my car. He's heard the song only by me. And I give him a hand gesture that a best friend would give his best friend.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't notice. I was like, bro, only I would play that song at 11 o'clock at night on a highway in that type of car, doing that hand gesture to you as I drive right in front of you. But he didn't know. He didn't know. So
oopsie. It was a little accident.
Yeah. But I also watched some Tokusatsu.
Oh, what did you watch?
So, you're gonna love these titles. I watched some high quality, not like me checking the runtime every 5 minutes Tokusatsu.
Oh, sounds banging.
So I watched the not softcore porno. Oh, that's the way to start this. Super Dimension Odyssey Trita, which is this low-budget 70-minute film that's kind of inspired by like Toei Henshin Heroes. It's this princess from another planet. She's stuck on Earth with this villainous organization, much like that of like Dark or Shocker.
Right.
That is wanting to get these two little crystals to have the ultimate sword that she's destined to have, and it's kind of boring and awful because there's like a 10-minute sequence where they're just whipping her. And I brought up how it's kind of a softcore, and that's because she's literally wearing a bra and underwear and then like a maid's outfit, but the maid's outfit is like very, very revealing. So, it is what it is.
As expected.
Yeah. Following that, I watched a film that I feel like is sounds just peak cinema, like Martin Scorsese would die of like how amazing this sounds.
So was this Transformers the movie?
No. It's a Zombie Self-Defense Force.
Zombie Self-Defense Force.
So it's about an alien spacecraft that it crash lands. And when it crash lands, it sends off this like shock wave that resurrects all the dead bodies in a forest. And those dead bodies go after this Yakuza member, this pop idol, and then some self-defense force personnel. Very much like Versus. Like, I'm watching this movie, I'm like, this is basically Versus, except a little different. But it did have a cool cameo that I noticed. And it's so when you watch Japanese movies, and there's this one American that typically is wearing glasses and has like dirty blonde hair, but a receding hairline. 9 times out of 10, it's Norman England. And I say that like out of the kindness of my heart. That's not a jab. So while watching this, I'm like, wait a minute, that looks like Norman. So I took a photo and I tweeted out, well, I don't know, but this looks kind of like a wild Norman England in my Zombie Self-Defense Force movie. And he actually responded and said, oh God, well, spoiler alert. And he sent a photo of him doing a selfie with some makeup that he definitely never had in the movie with one of the actors. So that's pretty cool. But beyond that, I also, in preparation for this episode, while I was doing my research, I found out that this is, in fact, this company that made this movie, this was not their first kaiju film, in air quotes. So Nikatsu has been mislabeled to only produce one kaiju movie, which is very inaccurate. Very, very inaccurate. We covered one of their films earlier this year, which is a kaiju film. Granted, it was a co-production, but Death Kappa was Nikkatsu. So back in the early 1900s, Nikkatsu produced a lot of short films. And one of their short films, Goketsu Jiraiya, Jiraiya,
Yeah.
Jiraiya, translates to Jiraiya the Hero, released in 1921, is a short 20-minute silent film that actually had some men in suit kaiju, human-sized monster stuff. So I actually was able to track it down, and I watched it. So, Rex, if you want me to, I took some notes on some stuff I noticed if you want to hear kind of what I have to say. So this is what I got as the synopsis. A ninja who has magical powers tells these people he meets about his fight against this lord of this town, I'm guessing. None of it was subtitled and it's silent, so I'm kind of lost. It takes place in the Meiji era. During the short, he transforms into a frog and fights. He uses a lot of magic, teleportation, and whatnot. And eventually he does win, and he does become the hero.
Right.
Like I said, it's a silent 20-minute short. It's very much inspired by kabuki plays. This was early on in Japan's film life. So it's very inspired by kabuki theater, which is probably it's the basis for tokusatsu. Kabuki plays was the basis for tokusatsu. And you actually see that a little bit in Ashura. When we covered that film, there's a section of the movie that covers our main character being a kabuki actor, and in it he does ride a monster in the play. I believe it is a giant frog, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, something like that.
So, and once you, like, kabuki plays is where Japan's theatrical arts really took place. And something about kabuki is it's very overdramatic, something that has carried over into film. A lot of people criticize kabuki for that, but I never had an issue with it. But in the film, everybody's very, like, big with their actions and the fights, which was really cool to see. They do use men in suit monsters for the toad, and the toad kind of.
So would this technically be like the first men in suit monster then?
So yes, and I was going to bring that up. So in 1933, you had the Great Buddha Arrival, which is the first in air quotes kaiju movie. To my understanding, before that, the first tokusatsu movie, in air quotes, was 1925's A Page into Madness. Now, that might have been the first full-length tokusatsu movie, which I own. I still need to watch it. But this predates it by 4 years, being 1921. So this might be the first instance of men in suits in a film outlet for Japanese cinema. I don't know. I definitely would like to keep looking to see if there's anything predating 1921. As of currently, though, it doesn't seem like there is.
Because, like, as far as I knew previously, like, the earliest two films I'd known of that did, like, suitmation or guys in rubber suits were Godzilla and Creature from the Black Lagoon.
Well, you also have, now granted it wasn't giant, but you had Kingu Kongu in 1933, the short film that played before.
Those would have been men in suit, wasn't they?
Yep.
Oh yeah, that's true actually.
And then that was in 1933, playing before King Kong in Japan.
Yeah.
And then in 1938, you had the two-part serial King Kong Appears in Edo. So, yeah, those definitely predate Godzilla and Creature from the Black Lagoon. And then, Jiraiya, the hero, would predate Kingu Kongu, and King Kong appears in Edo. So, but it was weird because when I see a frog in a Men in Suit format, I immediately think of the Magic Serpent, or Toei's Red Shadow television show, which was adapted into a compilation movie known as Ninja Scope: The Magical World of Ninjas. Both of those use the same toad suit. So that was kind of funny, seeing that. There's also a snake and a slug. They look pretty bad compared to the toad. The toad also like changes sizes. Once it's like really tiny, and then it also becomes like big and eats a person. There's also a really cool, I know they highlighted this in A Page into Madness with Tsuburaya's compositing with fades and whatnot, but in it there's a sequence where the ninja fades from the scene, which I thought was really cool. It's obviously like a composite shot of one being the ninja standing there and then the other being the other character standing, and that back where the ninja is, that shot dissolves as the new shot is overlaid. But I thought that was really cool that was done in 1921. Obviously, like, that's a really, real easy thing to do now. Like, it just takes about 2 seconds and you can do it in Premiere Pro. But, you know, back then they would have to overlay two film strips. They'd have to use their magic to fade it. So I just thought that was really cool. Most of the 20-minute short takes place in a fight in the snow. There's a fight where the ninja and two other people plus the Lord's men are all fighting in this snowy setting. This is where the toad eats the person, the snake appears, the slug appears. One interesting thing I wanted to note about this, and this is really it, this is kind of the last thoughts, because after this, the ninja wins, and they kind of celebrate, and then it ends. But during the fight sequence, something that I thought was just interesting was the camera never cuts. It's just this long shot, and it's a fixed shot. The camera does not move. The camera is stuck to view it from a front perspective, like you're watching a play. It's like the camera's the audience, and then you're watching the stage where the ninja and the other two are fighting the Lord's men, changing and like teleporting and transforming into the snake and the slug and the frog and eating people. And everybody's like doing the kabuki moves. There's even a moment where the ninja kills two men, and they run up to the camera and like they put their hands up like they're in agony and then fall over. Like, it's very stylized, and it was just really cool to see that and feel like you were watching a play. Because something about a play is you can't do, like, movies, something that movies have done to actors is they've made it so actors could be more subtle. Like, the little things help in a movie. But when you're on stage and the audience is sitting in the house watching you up on stage, you have to be big with your motions. You can't be tiny. You can't be subtle. Everything has to be big. That's the difference between a stage play actor and a film theatrical actor. Yeah. And that's why it's sometimes hard to cross over those mediums. So it was really cool just to see like them utilizing that stage acting in a movie very much in the style of kabuki plays. So I watched that Tokusatsu movie. And like I said, that was produced by Daikaiju. So that was one of their earliest, I think that is actually their earliest kaiju-ish movie. And then I watched another movie. I think Nikatsu did it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But God.
Do you know the name?
You know, I've been talking about these other movies that I kind of forgot about it. I don't remember what it is.
That is horrifically disappointing. You should really... Yeah, you were talking about how earlier you had like a checklist and all that. You should write down the movie on your checklist. I think it would be a great idea.
That might be a good idea.
I'm going to ask you about that next week.
I'll see if I can remember to do that.
You better.
Oh, God. What was it I watched?
Well, it was kaiju related. We know that.
Yes. It was Kaiju. I think Nikatsu did it.
Yeah.
It was early enough that people thought it was their first kaiju movie.
Mm-hmm.
But what was it?
I don't know. Was it... Well, there aren't too many other options, so I'm going to guess Gappa, the Triphibian Monster.
Gappa! It was Gappa!
Also known as Monster from a Prehistoric Planet.
Which makes no sense.
Yeah. What planet?
A prehistoric one.
Earth?
Earth.
Well, I guess, you know, I guess Earth was at one stage a prehistoric planet, so maybe it does make sense.
But in the movie, they never established that they're dinosaurs.
It's sort of implied, sort of suggested.
It brings up that the bones that are in the cave where the Gappa reside are dinosaurs, but
I mean, a prehistoric creature is not necessarily a dinosaur.
This is true. This is very true.
Because, like, you have prehistoric mammals, prehistoric fish, prehistoric amphibians.
Prehistoric men.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess you're right. Maybe it's like a metaphorical prehistoric planet. Like, not an actual different planet, but like
it's just
Earth.
No, it's just Monster from Earth is too boring.
You know, you are right. I was trying to come up with like a worse title, but honestly, that's pretty bad.
Exactly.
So yes, we are covering Gappa, the Triphibian Monster from 1967, released April 22nd. Funny thing, too, to point out here, this is episode 67. We're covering a movie from 1967.
67? Oh.
Yeah.
Now that's another happy little accident.
Another happy little accident. And so this film, Gappa, came out in 1967 as pre-established. This was like the year of kaiju movies in air quotes. This is the only time every major studio in Japan produced a kaiju movie.
Yeah.
You have Toho, who did King Kong Escapes and Son of Godzilla. Shochiku that did The X from Outer Space. Nikatsu obviously did Gappa, the Triphibian Monster. And then Toei co-produced with Far East Entertainment. They co-produced Yonguri, Monster from the Deep, a South Korean film. And
you can't forget Dai with Gamera as well.
Yes. Dai produced, this would have been Gamera versus Gaios, correct?
Actually, yeah. I was going to say Barugon, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Gauss.
Yes, Barugon came out in 1966.
In 66, yeah. Which,
speaking of Barugon, is it just me, or does it feel like... So, Gappa is a movie that really feels like you've seen it already.
Seen it before?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
Now, Barugon...
Dare I say it felt like it was like... I mean, there's one really obvious movie that Gappa gets compared to. But even throughout the movie, I felt a lot of similarities to a couple other films, like even King Kong vs. Godzilla, for example.
Mm-hmm. So right away, since we brought up Barugon, I want to talk about this. To me, it really feels like Barugon's story, pre-Barugon becoming a Daikaiju. all of that feels like it's taken from that movie and put in Gappa. Like,
I wasn't thinking of Barugon when I watched the film, but I guess you're not really wrong on that per se.
And like the whole, I don't know if it's not the look, but the mood of the movie definitely feels like Barugon.
Oh, speaking of the look, I felt the cinematography of the film actually felt just like the way, specifically for the drama unit.
Yes,
very similar to just like classic Toho sci-fi.
It did. Before I feel like we're diving right into our opinions. So, obviously, this movie was made to cash in on specifically the Toho Godzilla franchise.
And just that kaiju boom in general.
Yes.
Hell, Subaraya was in that year as well with Seven
and the Ultraman compilation movie. There was two or one that year, so Nikkatsu...
But everyone was really on their big game.
Yes. So Nikkatsu at the time, if I remember correctly, Nikkatsu wasn't doing too well.
Mm-hmm.
But that had been something that was gradual. The thing about Nikkatsu is they were a company known for their action movies. They were known as the action movie studio.
Mm-hmm.
But they also paid, like, they were one of the worst paying when it came to their actors. An actor in Monsters Are Attacking Tokyo, they brought up that Nikkatsu, in terms of payment, it would go Toho, Toei, Shochiku, Nikkatsu, Daiei. Nikkatsu being one of the worst when it comes to paying their actors.
I feel like I've heard that before, actually.
I've noticed that Monsters Are Attacking Tokyo is pretty much the source for most of the info on Gappa.
Yeah.
So another thing that it brought up was, so the film's funding came by the government, actually. So Nikkatsu, producer AC Kawai, Ace?
Yeah, Ace.
Ace Kawai had links. He had went to school with a politician that was currently in the Diet. And so he used that link to get funds for the film. They actually had a $1.4 million budget.
Which was a lot more than Nikkatsu would usually have, I believe.
Yes. It was, according to, I believe, the writers, it was 10 times the average Nikkatsu budget. But most of that budget was actually used to pay off debts that Nikkatsu had. Nikkatsu also had like golf courses and hotels. It's kind of funny because the movie talks about like this major company trying to like use Gappa to like make money and pay off stuff. And that's what Nikkatsu was doing. So
self-awareness in the script.
Yeah. So like 90% of the budget did not go to the film. And what would happen is,
so basically it had regular Nikkatsu budget in actuality.
It did. So
okay, that's pretty funny.
So what the deal was Nikkatsu would have that money, and then the returns from the box office would go towards paying back the government. And they were also banking on the acquisition of a foreign distributor, which they did get. American International Pictures acquired the rights, but it never went to theaters. It went straight to television. By this time, it was popular for the non-Godzilla titles to go straight to television.
Even the Godzilla titles were going straight to television, at least the ones that came out around that time, like Son of Godzilla.
Right, Son of Godzilla, Ebra, Horror of the Deep, Gamma versus All Monsters Attack. But that was a UPA title. That was different. So, it was disappointing for Nikkatsu when it comes to that because they ended up not getting the money they wanted. And shortly after this, Nikkatsu would end up filing for bankruptcy and going straight to softcore pornos, which is what Nikkatsu is most famously known for by this point.
I mean, to be fair, at that time, a lot of the companies, like post 60s, like early 70s, a lot of those Japanese film companies kind of had to make that transition. Toei
Right.
especially is pretty infamous for it.
Right. So, I mean, Nikkatsu just kind of followed suit with the rest of the Japanese film industry at the time.
Yeah.
And it's kind of so Gappa's actually really well regarded in Japan, but Nikkatsu never produced another kaiju film until they probably did some small stuff, but really their next big release wouldn't be until 2010's Death Kappa, which I've always viewed as like a spiritual sequel, not sequel, but like remake of Gappa in air quotes. So the writers of Gappa claimed that the movie was a satire of the genre. So while it was definitely ripping off King Kong versus Godzilla with like the opening with Gappa and the Islanders, especially in the whole like company taking the monster to Japan to like promote it and the monsters coming to Japan to destroy it, stuff like that. It was also meant to just kind of be a satire, be kind of this like this genre's overused at this point and has too many tropes.
I'm going to be honest, I never picked up on the satire element at all.
it definitely feels like it's all meant to be serious.
Yeah, I mean, the funniest parts of the movie I don't think are actually meant to be funny. I'm pretty sure it's just because certain aspects of the movie have kind of aged a bit poorly.
Right.
And yeah, it just, instead of feeling like it's satirizing the tropes, it just feels like it's using the tropes.
Right. And another reason why I feel like Kappa, Death Kappa specifically, was kind of a spiritual remake of Gappa is in Gappa, obviously, there's definitely some influences from the yokai Kappa on Gappa's design, but furthermore, there was also inspiration from the Hindu deity Garuda, which kaiju fans probably know as the name for the add-on to Mechagodzilla 2, known as the Garuda. Yeah. Both of those creatures had some influence on the designs for Gappa. And then in Death Kappa, he has that blue atomic breath, much like how Gappa does.
I mean, to be fair, blue atomic breath, where do you think that's really coming from?
This is true. It is definitely a staple of the Godzilla stuff. But furthermore, I think it also has to do with the fact that Tsuburaya had a hand in working on the effects for this movie. And Tsuburaya used that blue atomic breath look religiously.
I mean, weren't the effects done by Akira Watanabe?
He was the director. Yes, he was the director of the film. Well, not the film, but like the special effects. Yes. So there was definitely that. There's even there's a claim out there that Gappa was actually taken from the original design for what would eventually become Ultraman.
Oh yeah, like the like that old Bemula design.
Yes. However, there's like no evidence to support that. One source I read claimed that they purchased the design from Tsuburaya, but then I also read that that wasn't the case. It just Akira Watanabe worked at Tsuburaya with Tsuburaya and whatnot. So not only that, but just because the original design for the monster was a flatfish or a halibut. I don't really know what that is. I didn't have time to look that up. But it was not supposed to look like a Kappa Garuda blend with kaiju.
Yeah. I mean, they went for a few different ideas for what the monster would be as well. Like they had like a giant spider, giant squid, and like a giant flying squirrel at different stages.
The squirrel was Momora.
Momonra, yeah.
The squid, which fought Nazis, was called Arcticus.
Archetius, I'm going to say. Archetius.
And then the spider
Probably
was
wrong, but I'm going to call it that.
Gigant?
Yeah,
Gigant?
Giganto.
And then there was also the idea of a giant iguana versus a giant manta ray as a region devil of the seabed. Which...
Raygon.
Huh?
Raygon? Yeah.
Okay. So, and that actually, that script for that idea went the farthest. That was the closest to being produced before Gappa. And honestly, that sounds like kind of an interesting idea, if I'm going to be honest. That one specifically, I was really intrigued with.
Yeah. Could have been more original than this film, maybe.
Potentially. So they went through some different ideas when it comes to Gappa. But lo and behold, eventually they did end up on Gappa with like 10% of the budget that they actually had. And we had this.
Ultraman moment? Ultraman powered moment?
I mean, true. So the script was written by Nakashini. You had Gan Yamazaki, and you had
Yuzo
Nakanishi, which wrote it, and they have went
based on a story by Watanabe,
correct,
as well.
And in an interview with that Stuart Galbraith conducted for Giant Monsters or Monsters Are Attacking Tokyo, he asked them about the clear Gorgo influences. So when we get into the plot and we talk about the film, the movie's about abducting a kid and the parents coming and looking for it. They apparently had never seen Gorgo, so there's no Gorgo influence, but I mean it is very much like hand in hand. And even
having not seen Gorgo, this seems a lot like Gorgo,
right? And there was also the potentiality of the director Haruyasu Noguchi, like taking influence from Gorgo, but apparently he kept to the script. Or Watanabe, but the director kept the script pretty well, and he averaged about 20 days for filming, but he ended up shooting Gappa in 40, so like he took his sweet time on this film, which was quite interesting. But that's really all I have on the pre-production here. There's some obvious like housekeeping there about the facts and what's true and what's not true. Do you want to start talking about the actual film?
Yeah.
So I'm going to let you start us off here.
Okay. So the film starts with a group of people from a magazine publishing company, as well as a scientist, going to the Obelisk Island with some native people Were they scouting to collect animals, was it?
Yes, they were scouting to collect animals for their exhibit on a remote South Seas island, but they were also, to my understanding, just looking to see what island would work best.
Okay. I wasn't entirely sure on what their goal was.
I'm pretty sure that's it. Now, so during this opening sequence, they're on a boat. In some shots, it's obvious that the boat's superimposed onto some footage of the ocean, which I've never noticed in any movie before ever when it comes to like 60s kaiju. Maybe I'm just crazy, but like that was really weird to see for the first time. But is it just me, or like, so this came out in 1967, so this was a year after Ebra Horror of the Deep from Toho. But in Toho, it actually felt like a boat they were on. Whereas in this film, it kind of felt like they were on sound stages for all the rooms. Like, I don't know, did you pick up on that?
I only picked up on it like maybe in like that, I guess, crew quarters looking area with like the bunk bed and stuff like that.
Okay. But no, it was just, or like in Matango. Like Matango's another one where it's like I really felt like I was on a boat, but Gappa, there was, I think what it is, and I'll have to go back to rewatch some of these other Showa films, but I'm pretty sure Toho had it so the camera was rocking a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in
Could
Gappa,
be
I'm
that.
pretty sure I know in Gappa the camera is fixed. There is no rocking until the earthquake.
It only
that happens
rocks
later.
when the earthquake. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's weird that little detail that Toho would do with like the camera moving was enough to give it that sense of, okay, we are on a boat. We're not on a soundstage.
Yeah. I mean, it's not too big of an issue, but details like that definitely help a lot.
Mm-hmm. But no, we're, like you said, we're introduced to our characters here on this boat. We're given like they're going on to this island. We have our obvious love interests. We have our scientist. We have the comedic relief. And then we have all the side characters that nobody really remembers.
Yeah. It was... God, I could barely even remember the main characters' names.
There's main characters?
Allegedly.
I'm gonna go into that once we get towards the end here because I have some gripes.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's obvious that this opening feels very much like it's King Kong, like just straight up King Kong.
Yeah, I got a little bit of Matango vibes just because they were on a ship.
Right. Because they are going, they see an island after an earthquake.
And because there was a song before it as well.
That was there?
Yeah, there was the credit song.
That's right, yeah. So while they're on the boat, we're kind of given their reasoning and whatnot and kind of the dynamic we're going to see. And our comedic relief character, who's really obnoxious, like really obnoxious, he's fishing. Why he's fishing, I don't really know. Like, I feel like that's kind of counterproductive while you're on a boat, like a big boat, because it's not a tiny boat. They're not on like a yacht, like the Godzilla films. They're on like a huge boat, like a cargo boat. And the only time you really realize that is when you see the wide shots of the miniature.
Yeah, I was just about to mention how it does not feel anywhere near as big as it actually is.
No. And apparently it's big enough where they can house like mini motorboats to like dispatch into the water. Because that's how our main characters get to the island and back. But it never felt that way. Like, and that might be another reason why this boat specifically just didn't feel realistic or like real enough that I could be fooled for it, because it feels like it's a tiny yacht, but then it looks really big.
Yeah.
So it like that felt weird. But while our main character, not our main character, our comedic relief is fishing, suddenly he gets something on the line, kind of like the old man in 98. And he fishes up Gappa's parents?
Yeah, you see two glowing lights at the bottom of the sea, which, it's a kind of a visual motif a little bit in the film when the two adult Gappas show up. There's like a glow in the water around them.
And just around this time, there's also an earthquake.
Yeah.
Which is kind of weird. So, like, you would think that they would expect it to be an earthquake, but in all reality, it's the monsters. But then we find out that it's a volcano on an island that they're wanting to build a resort on. Which also doesn't make a lot of sense because the island is, like, not safe. Like,
I feel like they were suggesting that they wanted the island to be the resort island to be a different place because didn't they want like the native people to like come back so they could move them to the island like the resort island.
Right. So okay, and during all of this, there's an intercut with the CEO of this magazine company, Playmates Publishing.
Yeah,
that he talks about this. It's essentially what they were going to do in Jurassic Park 2 with like the whole like theme park in San Diego. Like there's a sequence where he's talking to like the investors, and it's exactly what is in Jurassic Park 2. So it's an island where they have exotic animals and like an outdoor restaurant and a resort and like one of those like ski lifts that takes you up a mountain.
Yeah,
but he's
even
also
got miniature display for it, like in Lost World.
Yes. And in it, like while he's describing it, he says, "You can go to this place right here," and I'm like in Japan, like what? They don't explain what this is. They don't explain the plan. They have a plan, but it doesn't make sense. Like
and it doesn't really end up mattering in film, anyways.
Right, because so. Our main characters say, "Oh, this island looks familiar. Oh, this is the one from the display that's in the manager's office."
Yeah.
And so it's like, so is this the island? If so, why are they doing the one with the active volcano that is clearly a lawsuit pending? Like, maybe the plans get scrapped because of the volcano, but nobody ever talks about it after they leave the island. Once they leave the island is no longer relevant.
I mean, the president of the companies probably doesn't even know about it since they don't seem to tell him.
This is true. This is very true. The CEO of this publishing company seems to be very ignorant and trusts his people way too much because they don't tell him a lot. Mm-hmm. And he just kind of goes with it. So our love interest characters and the professor and the side characters and our comedic relief, they get on a boat, motorized boat. They go to the island where they're welcomed by some natives.
Yeah.
Very much King Kong versus Godzilla style. And from here on...
They're even in, like, very similar outfits.
Yes. And from here in, like, the rest of this sequence really feels like it's King Kong versus Godzilla, which I think is what you were alluding to. So I'm going to let you...
I wasn't actually alluding specifically to this sequence, but yeah.
So I'm going to let you take the floor here and kind of explain this part.
Yeah, so they interact with the natives who are very welcoming to the Japanese people, more welcoming than you'd usually see in these types of movies. But it's sort of suggested that they have already had a history of like interacting with like Japanese lieutenants and people like that before. I
wonder if it had to do with World War II, when
maybe
Japanese military men were stationed on islands and whatnot.
Could be. That could very well be what it's sort of alluding to.
Especially the part where they bring up like the lieutenant, like the fact they're using military terms.
Yeah. Yeah, so they sort of just interact with the people a bit. The main female lead, she gets some she's a photographer, so she takes some photos.
Real Brie Larson stuff.
and actually in this, I think it's this sequence where they sort of establish that her goal is sort of to be like an independent woman. It's either this scene or a bit later where they sort of establish her goal as like she wants to be like an independent woman, doesn't really need to be a housewife and all that type of deal, which I only bring up because of the ending.
Yeah. Man, they really ruined that one.
It really did not age well. Well, speaking of not aging well, yeah, Japanese blackface as well for the natives.
I was wondering if you were going to bring that up. Yeah, so this falls under the category of Japanese kaiju movies from the 60s that uses Japanese actors to represent Pacific Island natives.
Yeah. Yeah. This film has definitely aged.
Just like King Kong versus Godzilla.
Yeah. And Mothra versus Godzilla, and I think Ibra does it too.
Horror of the Deep, and
probably the original Mothra.
A little bit of original Mothra, yeah, and probably a little bit of Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, and
oh yeah, the natives do appear in Ghidorah. That's right.
Yeah,
it was the 60s was certainly a time.
It was a time. It was a time. But I one thing I do appreciate is they didn't have the natives kick them off the island. I felt like that was an interesting and nice thing to do.
It was a pleasant surprise to not have to go through the beats of like the natives being like just aggressive against them.
Right.
Like, it's not necessarily a bad beat to have. It makes sense. It's just, most of these movies sort of have that.
Right. And the fact that Gappa did not have that, I thought was a really nice detail.
Yeah. But yeah, eventually, male lead, a reporter character named Kurosaki, at least that's what my notes tell me, Kurosaki and the photographer lady Koyanagi are talking to this young native boy, and he tells him about what they presume to be a god of the name Gappa. And, there's a statue of Gappa that he wants to show them, and he leads them to it and all that.
Now, the statue does kind of look like a Garuda, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah. One thing before we continue I wanted to bring up was that during like this sequence, whenever they're with like in the native people's village, did you notice that the film was like really, really overexposed and also kind of blurry in this sequence?
Specifically when they're walking to the cave, like through the jungle.
Yeah,
yes.
But even just like the village a bit as well.
I don't remember the village, but I definitely noticed it while they were walking through the jungle where it had that dreamy like. I was wondering if it was like this is an exotic island. It's almost dreamlike.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's like a death of the author thing. Like,
yeah, it's only in the village and like that jungle bit, yeah.
And then it's gone. So it's got to be either one, they were doing like on location shooting and the natural light was clearly,
perhaps they didn't light balance properly,
right? Or it was, and again, this might be death of the author, like me reading into it like a dreamlike exotic thing. I think it's probably the prior more than the latter.
Yeah.
Especially since the director was, during the interview with the writers, they brought up that the director was put on because he was not a very high-profile actor or director. He was known for doing kind of the, like, B or C movies for Nikkatsu, so he was just kind of put onto this project, so it wasn't meant to be, like, a highbrow, like, peak cinema, like Gojira or something.
Right. Yeah. But eventually there's another earthquake when they're admiring the statue. Yeah. Conveniently, an earthquake appears, destroys the statue, and opens up a cave for them that the kid, behind the statue, that the kid warns them to not venture into.
And as you would expect, They ignore him, yes.
They enter, the kid runs away, meanwhile the comic relief character tries to follow them. As well as, I guess, all the other characters, although I don't remember them establishing.
So later on, they do establish this. They establish this. So later on, in the cave sequence, it's right here. The male character tells the boy to go get the lieutenant and let them know. And then that's when they decide they start following.
Right. Okay. That makes more sense. Okay.
So yeah, they go into the cave, which, can I say, this cave is actually really well designed. Like, this is probably the the best thing in the whole movie is this cave. Like it looks great. The cinematography in this movie. Okay, I want to talk about the cinematography a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you brought up how it looks really good in the drama stuff, and I agree. Like it feels like it's kind of shot like a Showa J horror in a way, which might just be traditional Japanese drama.
I got more the vibe. I got more like the vibe of just like classic Toho sci-fi. Honestly,
yeah,
I was reminded a lot of. To be fair, the color palette of the movie kind of is sort of helping that. So maybe if it was in black and white, maybe I would have thought something like Snake Girl and the Silverhead Witch or something. And to be fair, I've only seen a handful of Showa J horrors, so. But
it definitely feels like more of maybe like more of an artistic.
Yeah,
look.
It's very nicely shot, this drama stuff, I'd say.
Yes, and it's weird because this isn't to knock Toho kaiju movies, but it really gives you the understanding of they were a little more commercial. They were a little more. I don't want to say basic. Maybe bland with their drama cinematography.
I don't know. I don't know. I wouldn't really argue that. I think the drama stuff in Toho sci-fi is pretty good.
In Toho sci-fi, I'm specifically referring to kaiju.
Oh, well, I'm sort of including that as well.
Okay.
But I mean, there's some films that do it better than others. Like I think, say, Space Amoeba is a bit above average with some absolutely gorgeous shots in that film for the drama unit here and there. But yeah, no, I don't know if I'd really say it's like a cut above per se. I'd just say this is
on par.
On par, good stuff.
Okay. I could see where you're coming from with that. Admittedly, I need to go back and rewatch a lot of the Toho sci-fi stuff.
Yeah.
But no, I definitely was like, they did a pretty good job at like the camera placement for.
Yeah, I was definitely impressed.
For specifically the drama stuff. I think the drama stuff in this shines through visually more so than anything the kaiju bring.
You see, I feel it's. I don't want to say the kaiju stuff is bad because I actually don't think it's bad. I think it's pretty good for the most part. It's just not as strong,
right?
But speaking of one sort of kaiju thing that I'm not a big fan of, so they find while they're exploring the cave, they actually find a giant egg alongside some giant bones as well, to be fair.
There's also like the love plot that starts developing here.
Yeah. Yeah. With the reporter and the photographer being in love or having that develop. And later it'll evolve into a triangle with
the professor?
Those two and the professor and the scientist, yeah.
Somehow?
Yeah, that was weird.
A little weird, yeah.
But yeah, they discover some prehistoric bones, which are suggested to be the Gappa. Oh, by the way, earlier in the film when they were exploring the jungle, there's just like a pterosaur.
Yes.
For some reason, I forgot to mention it.
That
it's
our
just
comic
there
relief
in one shot.
Yeah, our comic relief finds it while he's searching. I thought it might have been a pelican. Like a really weird-looking pelican?
I mean, it looks more like a pterosaur.
It does. it definitely is like, I feel like this could have been from Legends of Dinosaurs and Monster Birds, but...
I mean, it's not used in that film, but apparently it was reused in, like, another Nikatsu film or something in, like, 72.
Oh, interesting.
Amorous family, like a fox and a raccoon, apparently, is what it was used in.
Okay.
And apparently part of the prop is also just a recycled bit of, like, the female Gappa.
Oh.
Supposedly.
But the egg is...
sorry, that's not what my notes said. The head of the female Gappa also appears in that film.
Oh.
Which was a Nikatsu Roman porno.
Oh. Lovely.
72.
Oh.
Makes sense.
Makes sense. Lines up. Makes sense with the timeline. But speaking of Gappa, we are introduced to the egg, which is a little weird looking.
And almost immediately hatches to an even weirder looking baby Gappa.
Yes. That has the Godzilla the series yellow goo.
Yeah.
By this point...
I don't like the baby Gappa. I don't like how it looks.
It does look... Baby Gappa looks a little funky. Baby Gappa's a little weird.
They say it's cute, but I think the adult Gappas are cuter.
I really like... Okay, actually, I'm not going to get into the kaiju designs yet.
Okay.
But yeah, we're introduced to Gappa, baby Gappa. The rest of our crew eventually finds them. There's an earthquake. The lovebirds go back. They find the comedic relief character. They go back to look after the rest of their team gets there. They find the baby Gappa. The kid's like, no, don't mess with Gappa. Gappa be angry. Of course, nobody listens. And they take the Gappa and put it in a cage
somehow. Yeah.
They really gloss over this. And then the natives are like, don't do this. Put Gappa back. Gappa be angry. They don't listen. And then they take baby Gappa and they go back to Japan.
Yeah. Meanwhile, in the cave, the two adult Gappas emerge from the water.
Which, okay, I'll talk about the designs now. I really like the adult Gappa designs. They look really good.
Oh, yeah, I agree. And I love... The one detail I really liked was the sexual dimorphism between them.
Yes!
Because the male has, like, a longer middle horn, and all the three horns on its head are more pointed.
Yes.
It also has a bit of an angrier expression, too, I think. Whereas the female, it has shorter horns. They're a bit softer, pointed more downwards, and like slightly, I guess, friendlier looking eyes. I think that's a really nice touch.
I agree. I noticed that. I was like, man, I love that. I love that.
And I was actually surprised because I thought they were just going to look the same.
Right? No, that there's in this movie, there's some tiny details that work out really well.
And I actually I like this introductory scene for them. I think the shot where they're first emerging from the water with like the little puppets is a bit weird because I don't think those puppets look good because they're used a couple times in the film and yikes. But the actual shot of them, like of both Gappas emerging from the water, it's like in close up with them hidden mostly like
in shadow.
The actual design is in shadows with only really the eyes being clearly visible.
Right.
I think that's really cool. The scale's a bit wonky.
Yes. And throughout this film, that's an issue.
Yeah. But otherwise, I think it's a neat introduction otherwise.
I agree. And I do like... One thing I think that Gamera did really well for the greater kaiju genre is following Daiei's first couple of Gamera films, it seemed like they started to take on the idea of glowing lights being in the eyes, which I really like. I think that adds I
think it looks cool.
It looks cool, and it adds a sense of...
Fantasy?
Yes. Fantasy, a sense of... And, like, one thing that this movie does that's another subtle detail is when the Gappa parents aren't angry, their eyes are yellow. But when they're angry, they turn red.
I think that's actually... You might be right, actually.
They do. It's very much Five Nights at Freddy's the movie. But no, I love that. I love that little detail.
Yeah, you are right, actually. I didn't pick up on that, but yeah, actually, thinking back to it, yeah, their eyes were red during like the rampage sequences, weren't they?
Mm-hmm. And it's a really nice way to help articulate the emotion with limited ability in facial expressions and suits. the eye color is everything.
Yeah, I mean, on that point, you gotta on that point, like little details like that really help. When, from what I understand, they were the suit actors, which there were 4 suit actors for the 2 adult actors, or for the 2 adult Gappas total. From what I understand, it was a real struggle portraying them because the suits were really stiff.
Mm-hmm. And you can definitely
Granted,
tell
all
they were.
suits are stiff, but yeah, particularly in the arms, I think you can tell.
Yes, I agree. And one thing that I appreciate about especially Showa era kaiju suits is they didn't have the animatronics or the CGI to like articulate their facial expressions, so they had to be creative with that. And it added a level of, like you brought up earlier, fantasy, that fantastical element that Showa era encaptures.
Right. Because, like, the glowing eyes, that's never going to be realistic, but going for realism, you just miss out on really cool visuals like that.
Right. And that's something that I think Showa era does really well, is capture the fantasy element that is definitely lost a bit as the Heisei era and Millennium and Reiwa have came in when it comes to this stuff. Really, I think the best example of the glowing eye still is Tsuburaya still does that. Tsuburaya still uses the glowing eye effect, which I think is a really good thing that still holds to that Showa. I mean,
era. their main hero has that effect.
right. But even the kaiju, the only thing that Tsuburaya has done differently with their kaiju is they'll CGI like eyes blinking or like pupils moving. Which is a great idea. That is perfect on how to utilize CGI for suits.
Oh yeah, definitely. And Tsuburaya, I think, has been doing a really good job in stuff like that and really nice visual touches while keeping like that Showa aesthetic.
Right. But going back into the plot, so following this, correct me if I'm wrong, but we cut back to our human characters in the mainland, bringing Baby Gappa to their boss.
Yeah, we get a little scene. They're on the boat, and during this, we get a little scene with the boss trying to like figure out, him and his employees trying to figure out what Gappa is, since they think it's just some sort of like red big lizard. And we're introduced to his daughter and something that's brought up and never mentioned again, where like the daughter's mother is in heaven, so she's dead, and she wants a new mother.
Right.
She wants like her like the babysitter to be her mother.
Right.
So you'd think you'd get like some little subplot or character development with like the boss and his daughter, but then this is never brought up again.
I mean, it's touched on at the end, but it's really, really, really. I mean, they bring up how like the parents want the child and the child wants the parents, and that's how it's linked.
Yes,
but it's barely there. It's more to reconnect them because in the movie, the daughter disconnects from the father.
I guess.
There's a lot of subplots with these characters that kind of don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
And that's because we have that the trying to figure out what Gappa is, and then the plan of what do they do with Gappa. And how do they go with science, and how do they go with press and the stock market and making money and all of that succeeding and everybody having like their success, where we kind of get the...
He also kind of doesn't believe them about the whole Gappa thing, and like one of the guys helping him research is like, maybe they just brought up like a burnt lizard's corpse or something, which he ends up taking at face value.
Yeah, it's a little weird, and we're also introduced to how every character has their motive, which is a nice little thing, like giving every character their little motive. But it does become a little overused when everybody has a motive and it's different and they're trying to develop all those motives, but they clearly don't want to focus on them.
Yeah.
Which following this, we cut back to the Gappa, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. The two Gappas emerge from the cave and end up rampaging through the village.
So, I mean, we've already brought up how the scale is off throughout this movie, but during this sequence, I realized there's another thing that Nikkatsu failed to capture when it comes to Kaiju Eiga, and that's the lack of a score. There's only about 3 or 4 moments in this movie where I remember there being music.
Yeah. Yeah, the soundtrack for this is, for what little is there, which I don't really remember any of it, it's very unmemorable.
Yes. and
like, outside of like the opening like credits music and like the ending Gappa theme, like outside of that, I don't. What music is there to really associate with the kaiju? You know,
right? Exactly. I mean, there's the Gappa,
yeah.
But that's
like you've got no like Akira Ifukube Godzilla theme,
right?
Ifukube like Daimajin theme, even,
or like. You know, in the Gamera series, you had the Gamera.
Yeah.
Gamera.
I mean, I guess you kind of have the Gappa thing.
But it's at the very end. And the thing about it is, specifically in this first rampage, I remember David Callett brought up in his commentary for Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, he said when he watched the film on his 8mm Ken Films version when he was a kid, there was no audio. And it was funny watching the kaiju fight because there was no audio, there was no music. Mm-hmm. Ifukube is what made those scenes powerful.
Right.
The score was Godzilla's voice. Ifukube created Godzilla's roar and quite literally created the voice for Godzilla.
Yeah.
The music is what gives the scene weight. And that's something I'm trying to do in my short film, is it's very audio based. That's where a lot of the feeling of what I want in that short film is coming from, is that audio. Mm-hmm. In this rampage sequence, there's not a lot of music to create this atmosphere, to create this image of this is the eradication of these people. Which it is. They all die.
Except for the little boy.
Right. But it's just kind of there. It just kind of happens.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there's also an American submarine there with, like, a captain who is very clearly not played by an American.
Which is really weird. I was like, okay, where did the United States Navy come from? Why are they here?
Yeah.
Are we going to...
I'm pretty sure that... Are they even... Do they even show up again? I don't think they do.
They don't. They disappear, and then suddenly a Japanese individual has the boy.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay.
Oh, no, it's an American guy who has the boy.
Is it an American?
Yeah. His name is his name is literally Dr. McDonald.
Oh.
He's the one character I remember the name of.
See, I don't even remember him. Like...
He's the one who brings the boy.
Yeah.
I don't remember what he does outside of that.
He stands there. He's a background character.
He literally is. He's like in the car for a couple scenes. Says almost nothing. Probably nothing after his introduction.
So, yeah, and the boy is transported to Japan, even though he's in the United States Navy submarine. That feels a little weird. Also, the submarine definitely doesn't feel like a submarine. It definitely looks like a regular house, regular room, with the one sequence we get in it where the boy's sitting in the bed. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, this doesn't look like a submarine. Mm. And then from here, don't we move back to... I mean, we jump back to Japan, where we get some... animal cruelty and whatnot with Gappa and the CEO and him his daughter losing faith in him, and the
That's a little bit later, I think.
Okay. And then we have the development of our photographer having a love triangle with the professor and the reporter.
Right.
And then her being upset with them a little later on because of their personal goals they're trying to make with this.
Because they actually do their jobs.
Right.
And she's like sympathetic for the Gappas, for like the baby Gappa, which is fine, but like there's nothing to it.
Right. It's very much like, okay.
Yeah. But don't worry, soon enough, the two adult Gappas emerge at like was it Haneda Airport or near that area? Or no, that's later.
That's later. That's way later.
Yeah, that's the end. But yeah, they emerge from the ocean and attack a city. So you get some classic kaiju action, of course.
But you also kind of see that the effects are kind of they're not the best. They're definitely not on par with Daiei or Toho.
I don't think they're terribly far. I'd say they're fairly close to Daiei. Not Toho, I'll agree, but I don't think they're far off from Daiei.
I would still say they're a step down from Daiei.
I'd have to rewatch I'd have to rewatch more of the Gamera films. But I still thought this was a pretty fun sequence. This is probably, out of the kaiju scenes, this is probably like my favorite sequence in the film.
And you definitely get some Godzilla vibes here. I think this is where we've moved from...
Yes, especially when the tanks show up
yes.
and like when one of the Gappas shoots its atomic breath at the tanks and like the fire on the tanks. That looks like the shot from King Kong vs. Godzilla.
Yes. And it's kind of interesting. So we went from King Kong to King Kong versus Godzilla to Gorgo back to Godzilla. And like I said, the whole opening also feels very much like Gamera versus Barugan.
Yeah.
So
even later in the sequence, after destroying the city, they kind of the Gappas take flight because they not only are they aquatic, but they also have wings.
They're Triphibian.
So they land aquatic and sea. Yeah, Triphibian Monster. So they go to a castle and attack it, and I swear, meanwhile they're also attacked by jets. So like the shot of the jets, the way that shot looks like 54. But then you even get like, I swear they did a homage to King Kong vs. Godzilla with the two Gappas like clawing at the building at the castle, one on each side of it.
I don't remember. Maybe?
Because like they approach the castle, one of them starts destroying it, and then the other comes one's on the right side and the other comes from the left side as well and starts destroying it.
I feel like I remember that now.
Yeah. So I'm like, is that a King Kong vs. Godzilla homage? I mean, either way, again, with a feeling like I've seen it before,
right?
Whether or not it's a homage.
Now, also during all of this, isn't it kind of shot at night, like a dusk? So it's all kind of dark and.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of looks a bit day for night-ish.
A little bit,
at least when they're at the castle. The city looks fine. It's just the castle that looks more day for night-ish. And it doesn't help that the set also, you see the edges of set as well.
Yeah, and like
multiple times.
Yeah, like in every shot you see the end of the set. And
you even see the roof.
Oh, can you?
Yeah, you see the roof at least twice.
Ah, fair enough. And at the end of this, isn't this where when they go into the lake, there's the flood?
Yeah, not yet. I don't think. I think that's a bit later when it floods.
Okay, because I mean this sequence does last for a solid couple minutes.
Yeah, it's more or less like the big extended rampage of the film.
But
there's a little bit later, obviously, but this is the main one, I'd say.
Right, but also during this, I was like, wait, where's our main characters? Like, what? How are they impacted by this? Why, like, it almost feels like nothing happens. So, like, I mean, granted, they get drawn in to, like, help with the solution for no reason, but it really does feel like there's no weight to them during this rampage.
Yeah, you see, I feel like that's an issue because, like, for me, up until this point, I was, like, actually quite enjoying this film for the most part. I thought it was pretty fun, just a pretty fun bit of, like, 80-minute kaiju run, right? And then sort of after this, because this is about at the hour mark, after this sequence, it kind of just becomes increasingly obvious how little the characters are actually contributing to the film, that I just kind of got bored with it a little from this point. Like, I kind of was my interest was waning.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I was kind of like, okay, I'm a little bored now.
Yeah, I got my fill with that rampage.
And so, I don't know. And Death Cap, I think, had the same issue for me, where, like, once you have too much kaiju action, it does definitely get a little bland.
Mm-hmm. I don't think it's necessarily that this was too much. I just don't think the actual plot of this film is interesting enough.
It could be that. And I think another part of it, too, is just, like, the lack of scale. Like, something that I appreciate about Toho, and I think Daiei does this as well, is their kaiju movies definitely have scale. Like, you can definitely tell they're trying to be big.
Especially Toho.
Whereas Gappa, they clearly have an issue of, like, trying to create scale. When Gappa...
They shoot too high up.
Yes.
They shoot too high up too often.
And too close. Because throughout the entirety of this film, you're pretty much on a close-up of the Gappa.
Especially, I mean, their introduction is... As much as I think that introduction is really cool, it works... In terms of scale, it works, but it would work better for, like, a smaller monster, One that's, like, maybe only, like, 5 meters tall, Not something that's supposed to be 60.
Right. No, I agree, and they also have an issue of not having a foreground and background, like, creating that depth and that scale. That's another issue I think they have in
certain shots. Yeah, I think, like, some of the wide shots for, like, when they're attacking, like, the castle area. I mean, frankly, I think that set's just too empty during the castle bit.
Yes,
because, like, the city stuff looks pretty good, but that castle, it's the castle, and then it's just mostly, like, a plain, like, grassy area, slightly mountainous, I guess, a little, but, like, otherwise mostly a plain area. So I think that's part of the issue there as well.
I agree. Yeah. So, it doesn't really work for me. Like the kaiju stuff in this movie. I think the Gappa look cool and I like the lighting, but I mean, during this sequence, I honestly felt the most disconnected from the rest. Once this sequence started, I kind of started losing interest.
For me, it wasn't until after this rampage sequence that I was losing interest.
So the rampage sequence ends with the flood, correct? Or
pretty sure it's the next rampage that has the flood. Yeah, it's the next rampage that has the flood.
So after this sequence, we're back to our human characters in the splitting of the daughter with the CEO and the splitting of the photographer with the reporter and the professor, correct?
Yeah, because she's like, you guys are too interested in your own careers and not in the baby Gappa, so I don't love either of you anymore.
Right.
I'm sorry.
And I feel like this is an example of how the script could have used a bit more work. The thing I like about like what Shinichi Sekizawa and what Kimura did for their Toho stuff is everything did not fall into place at the same time. It was something that, events had to transpire for things to fall into place. Whereas here it feels like everything just happens. Like it's the plot has to move along, so the plot moves along.
Yeah, it doesn't really feel like anything's actually developing in terms of like this like love triangle or things like that. It's just happening.
Right. There's no action to cause a reaction. The love triangle it begins, it happens, it ends, it comes back. The little girl and her dad, it is established, it ends, it comes back. The Gappa, it's established, it happens, a reaction does happen there, but then the reaction happens like 3 times until something occurs to end the stuff.
Yeah.
Like, the script is very much a beat for beat, this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens. It's not this happens, so this happens. It's just, we have to get from point A to point B.
Yeah.
Which I wasn't a huge fan of. And from this point, the human characters are boring. They are boring. Yes. I don't care. I'm done. Like, please get to the end of the movie. I think I did check the runtime to see, okay, I have about 40 minutes.
This was actually where I checked the runtime as well.
I think...
Oh, no, that was like 20 minutes.
Is it 20 minutes? Because it's an hour.
This was an hour in the film, in an 85-minute film.
Okay, that's right. Yeah, there's 30 minutes. There's about 30 minutes left, right?
In the American cut.
Okay. See, I watched the Japanese version, which is only a little longer.
No, it's actually shorter.
Is it?
Yeah, it's 85 minutes, so hour 25.
Oh. So, okay, now I'm confused. So we need to put a pause. And so I watched the Media Blasters Blu-ray, which is the original Japanese version,
right,
with the international dub. Now, the international dub skips over one line at the end of the movie. Everything else is dubbed.
Okay.
So, to my understanding, the American cut was shorter.
No, the American cut actually has some extended special effects scenes.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, because there's footage that was deleted from the Japanese cut that's put back into the American cut, I believe.
So maybe that's why I don't really recall the second Rampage as much.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've only watched the Japanese version, so...
Okay.
But, yeah.
Well, now I'm going to have to watch the American version. Which I do have. I have the original Media Blasters DVD, which has both cuts, and then I've got the Blu-ray, which has just the Japanese version with the English dub.
Right, yeah.
Okay. Well, there's something new. It's got a Mothra versus Godzilla situation going on.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
So,
except I don't think it's like a full, like, original scene. I think it's just extended version of a Rampage, I guess.
Gotcha. So, our human characters have their, like, this is over moment across the board. And then aren't they called in to help figure out what to do?
Yeah. The kid is also, like, reintroduced for some reason when, like, Mr. McDonald shows up.
Right. And he's like, Gappa needs to go back to parents.
Yeah,
send Gappa home.
All he says in the entire film, basically.
Is Gappa go home. Gappa.
He's the Kenny of this film.
He is the Kenny of this film. But it also, like, one thing I do appreciate is he doesn't know everything. He just seems to know one thing and sticks to that.
Yeah.
And when
I don't really care because he's annoying.
This is true. But, like, the one moment where he does know something, and it's very meta because they're like, well, how do you know this? He's like, well, this is what I was told. I've been told this.
Yeah.
Which is nice because usually it's just like, oh, The kid knows everything. We're just going to go with it.
I mean, you really don't need that line of dialogue here because, like, you could kind of just infer that the kid was, like, taught by the, like, whoever other people in the village told him about it. You can kind of infer that anyways.
What's the island's name one more time? It's really weird.
Obelisk.
The Obeliskans?
They never call them that in the film. I just say Obelisk Islanders. Be probably better.
But that sounds weird. The
care.
Oblikins.
Anyways, the military works with the scientist and all that to come up with a plan. I don't know how the reporter, comic relief, or the photographer play into it.
But they're there.
They're just there. Yeah.
They're there because they have to be.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that. We said, oh, wow. Look at that. We're on the same wavelength.
Yeah. Yeah, they send like some boats down with massive speakers.
They're like me on the way to Shin Kamen Rider.
Yes. Yeah.
They think the boats and they have high frequency sounds to.
That's right. Yeah. To just like annoy the Gappas into leaving the water.
They should have just played the movie. It probably would have worked by this point.
So yeah, the Gappas emerge from the water, the weird puppets and all. And so yeah, the military tries shooting them with various missiles and all that.
And it does not work.
And then the Gappas flood the city.
Which looks awful. It's on par with Godzilla Raids Again. The flooding is on par with a 10-year-old movie at this point.
Oh god. 12-year-old at this point.
This is true. And following this, they're like, the only thing that we can do is give the baby Gappa back.
Yeah.
And then everybody just... I mean, the CEO guy kind of disappeared at this point, if I remember correctly. Like, he has this whole thing with his daughter, and then he just kind of disappears until the end.
Yeah, because that's where he tries to... he wants to keep the baby Gappa.
Right.
And is arguing with him. I mean, there's a little bit earlier before that where he's like torturing the baby Gappa, but it doesn't amount to much.
Yeah. So from here, the rest of the movie is basically the characters turning from let's research and keep the baby Gappa to let's get the baby Gappa back.
Yeah.
And if this was a typical Showa Kaiju movie, the kids would be the leading source, but I feel like they're basically sidelined at this point as well.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly, at this point, I feel like no character really matters.
I don't think there's any reason to really have the daughter.
No, the daughter's just there to give the CEO a humanistic side, I guess. Honestly, at this point, you could cut out all but like two of these characters, and the film would
pretty much.
And the film would really not change a whole lot.
Pretty much, yeah.
I forgot to bring up earlier that there's this weird lore established that when you put a pole near Gappa, he creates electricity.
Oh yeah.
They don't do anything with it. It's like it's a line and they're done.
I forgot about that. Yeah.
And I think it has
mattered.
And I'm pretty sure it does nothing. Like it's never brought back. It's never like we can't touch it because it has electricity.
Yeah, it's not.
This movie has a lot of throwaway lines and whatnot that really don't matter.
Yeah. But yeah, so they sort of airlift the baby to Haneda Airport. Meanwhile, the Gappas are still on their rampage throughout Tokyo, I suppose.
And then they end up at an airport, right?
Yeah, Haneda Airport, yeah.
And the baby Gappa's there, but the baby Gappa's too quiet, which is weird because you'd think... Like, just assuming here that it's going to be semi-animalistic, the baby's cries would be able to be heard by the parents no matter how loud or quiet they are.
I don't know. I feel like it's believable enough.
Okay. I don't know. I don't necessarily
I feel
agree,
it's believable.
but it brings a great moment to recall back to King Kong versus Godzilla, where they're like, let's connect the speakers and play the sound over the sound system. Except it's...
I got King Kong vs. Godzilla vibes from them airlifting the baby.
Oh, that's right, they did. Also, the baby grows, and nobody really talks about it.
Yes. I mean, they mention... The scientist does mention that it's growing, to be fair. But, like, in this... So, when it was in his cage, it was, like, maybe 10, 20 meters, something like that. Because that's about how big his cage is. Probably, like, not even 10 meters, honestly. But then, when at this end sequence, it's got to be, like, at least 40 meters, because it's, like, 2/3 the height of, like, the adult Gappas, and the male one's, like, 60 meters.
Right.
So...
And so they let...
Once again, scale is off. This was probably the most obvious scene where the scale was off.
Yes.
This ending.
So the baby Gappa's there. They hook up all the sound systems. They get the mother Gappa and the father Gappa to get to the baby Gappa. And everybody's happy, and the Gappa fly off, and then the reporter and the professor are standing there. And this is where the beginning of this movie ages horribly, not even an hour later. I'm pretty sure, like, it's less than an hour where this is established. So the photographer comes up and says, well, I quit my job. I'm going to marry an office man. I'm going to be a stay-at-home mother, and I'm going to tend to children.
And have some babies, like any woman should.
And then she walks off, and in Kevin Bacon style, the professor, who would be Fred Ward from Tremors, tells Kevin Bacon's character, the reporter, that he shouldn't let her go. And he walks up, and they walk off into the sunset. And the Gappa fly off into the sunset, and the theme song plays. And we're left to question why we just went through a whole movie and really had no characters develop and had nothing really of substance.
Mm-hmm.
This movie has no substance.
Yeah. But that arc with the female character is pretty funny.
It's hilarious how awful it is. So, yeah.
No, you're right. The characters are nothing in this film.
So that's Gappa.
Yes. The Triphibian Monster.
Arguably...
Or monsters, really.
This is true. This is probably, honestly, like, it's not awful. Like, I don't hate this movie.
I don't mind it. It's just not really good.
No, it's cannon fodder to the Kaiju Eiga, I feel like, of the 60s.
Right, yeah.
I think
the designs are cool. And, like, there's some cool cinematography here and there. Like, you can get some really nice looking screenshots from this movie, believe me, I know. But outside of that, it's not much really to it. Right.
And, like, there was never a sequel. There was a rumored Gappa versus Gulala, the monster from the X from Outer Space movie, Shochiku was producing, but that has since come out to be false. That was just simply rumors. However, Nikatsu in the 90s did think about remaking Gappa. Obviously, like, nothing came of it. It seems like it was just talks and it ended, but Gappa did appear as, like, some stock footage in some other movies and whatnot.
I mean, that's probably because a lot of people think that Monster from a Prehistoric Planet is copyright free.
Correct. Just like the American versions of Gamera and whatnot. Yeah. A lack of a copyright notice in the AI TV versions made people believe these are public domain, which led, I think it's been riffed on Mystery Science Theater 3000. I wouldn't be surprised.
I think you're right.
It definitely feels like if the Gamera films were, this could definitely be put up as well.
I know Young Gary was as well.
Yes. So, I don't think I'm going to rewatch Gappa anytime soon. I'm trying to think of how I would summarize this movie. I mean, the budget for this movie...
It's good for background.
It's good for background. The budget for this movie clearly hadn't created issues for it. It has ambition, but the story is so lacking that it just kind of is there. And that makes sense for why it's there because, and this is where I'm going to segue into our casting crew, I mentioned earlier that the co-writers were Gon Yamazaki and Ryuzu Nakanishi, who co-wrote The War in Space, which I'm pretty sure I had the same issue with. It just kind of ends.
I've never seen it.
The War in Space?
Yeah, I've never seen it. Oh, wait. Oh, sorry. I thought you said Warning from Space.
No, The War in Space.
My bad.
I was like, did we not just cover that movie like a month ago?
Sorry, I misheard you. I misheard you.
But no, I feel like I had the same issue with The War in Space because it just ended. Like there was plot problems throughout the entire film. That just kind of led to it not being as grandiose as I thought it should have been. I said that was probably because it was rushed, but now I'm wondering if it's just the writer doesn't know what he's doing entirely.
Could be both.
Could be both. And we also dodged a bullet because he was working on King of Monsters, Resurrection of Godzilla, which was a Jun Fukuda scrapped Godzilla movie from 1977.
That's right.
That would morph into what would become Godzilla in 1984.
Right, yeah.
It's funny you mentioned Warning from Space because the composer Sitaro Omori actually did the music for Warning from Space. And
I knew Warning from Space had some connection to this. I knew I read that somewhere.
And then he also did the score for one of Daiei's ghost story movies, Depth of Kasane, which I've definitely heard of before. I just don't remember what's so relevant about that one. But I know that I've heard of that one before. Mm-hmm. We already brought up the director of special effects, Akira Watanabe, that basically worked on every Toho science fiction movie from Godzilla 54 up until Monster Zero. He also worked on Ultra Q and was co-director of special effects on Kenji Fukusaku's The Green Slime.
Yeah.
The voice studio behind this, the dubbing studio for the English language track for this was from William Ross, who had people such as Burr Middleton, Carol...
Didn't Robert Dunham also?
Robert Dunham, Cliff Harrington, Carol Weiland. All these actors we've seen. Robert Dunham was actually in Godzilla vs. Megalon, and all the people in...
And
Dogora. All of the people in the dubbing studio you've probably heard on other was this for other dubs that AIP specifically put out. Or just those standard. I'm trying to remember the company that Frontier.
Yeah.
The Frontier Dubcast that did.
mean, William Ross was in War in Space as well.
He was. William Ross was.
He was like the doctor, the one that gets the imposter.
Yep, and he was in Warning from Space as the general, if I remember correctly.
Again, haven't seen it.
Message from Space?
Oh, I thought you said Warning from Space.
Did I say Warning? You'll have to check.
Yes.
I meant Message from Space.
Okay. Now you're just trying to trick me.
Uh-huh.
Now you're just trying to trick me.
William Ross, who also was the director for the dubbing for this film, he was in Message from Space as General. I don't remember his name, but I'm pretty sure that was him, right? No, that was a different actor. But William Ross was in Message from Space. And William Ross also did some voice work for The Last Dinosaur, which was one of our first movies we covered. Mm-hmm. As for our actors, a lot of the actors in this movie did nothing Toku related, but we did have Tomio.
Most of them, I think, were in some of the director's other films. I think. like Yoko Yamamoto.
And a lot of them also did like your Nikatsu pornos.
A lot of them did Stray Cat Rock series. Is that Nikatsu who did that?
I'm pretty sure it was Nikatsu that did that one. Yeah, those.
I need to watch those movies purely because of Meiko Kaji.
But you did have Tamio Kawichi, who was in Battle Without Honor or Humanity. I just wanted to list that one because I think that's a very famous Japanese film. He was in Sonny Chiba's The Bullet Train. He also ended up being in Ultraman Tiga as the head of Guts. That was Guts, right?
Yes, Guts.
And then would later appear in Ultraman Dyna and Ultraman Tiga, The Final Odyssey, the movie for Tiga, and then appeared in Superior Ultraman 8 Brothers. Yoko Yamamoto was in Blade of the Immortal, the Takashi Miike film.
Yeah.
Zenji Yamada was in Kamen Rider and Kamen Rider V3 in a few episodes.
Oh, that's cool.
You had Kokan Katsura, who was in Blind Woman's Curse in an episode of Ultraman Taro. Speaking of Blind Woman's Curse, the producer, who we brought up earlier, was the producer on Blind Woman's Curse, and also apparently was a producer on Godzilla, the series Monster Wars, the video game. Yeah, at least according to his IMDb. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but that was like okay, that's kind of weird.
I mean, hey man, I respect it.
And then finally, from our actors, the only person left that had any other tokusatsu credits was Sanpei Mine, who was in The Invisible Avenger and Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai. Actually, I did forget to bring up one person. Mikey Danning, who, get this, was in quite a few, was in a very select few kaiju movies, but he might hold a trophy that no other actor does. He was in Shochiku's The X from Outer Space. Obviously, he was in Nikatsu's Gappa, the Triphibian Monster, Toei's Terror from Beneath the Sea, and Shochiku's Genocide, but he was also in Toho's Rodan. So he might be the only actor to be in a kaiju movie from Toho, Nikatsu, and Shochiku.
Huh. Interesting.
Unfortunately, he couldn't get in a Daiei film, but...
Damn. Then it would have been perfect.
He might be the Lance Hendrickson of kaiju actors. So, with that, I'm kind of out of things to bring up when it comes to Gappa.
Yeah, that's about all the notes I had as well.
So, I guess we will have a list at the end of this month, as we like to do lists for our themed months, for our favorite to least favorite film. Mm-hmm. So currently, Gappa's sitting at my number 1, but
same. But it's also sitting at the bottom.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens as time progresses, but I definitely don't think Gappa's going to continue.
I do not think it's going to be number 1.
No, I feel like Gappa...
I would be in shock if it was at number 1.
Likewise. So... I feel like we're to the point where the only thing left we can really do is tell the lovely people where they can find us if they loved listening to us for the last 2 hours complain about Gappa.
Alrighty. Sounds good to me.
So I'm going to let you go ahead and start us off, Rex. Where can the people find you at?
Well, you can find me on YouTube at Rexino, on Twitter at Rex_Xenomorph, and on Instagram at Rex_Xeno, although I think that account's hacked. Oopsie. I'll worry about that problem later. And then also you can check out my writing on the Tokusatsu Network.
Alrighty, as for me, you can find me on YouTube at ET13 Productions, on Twitter at ET13 Productions, or on Instagram at ET13 Productions. If you want to find my other personal accounts, it's not very hard, but I'm not going to link them. And with that, we're going to wrap things up here, but we always got to do what you can do to support our podcast. Don't forget to rate us on iTunes. That boosts our ratings and helps us get recommended to more people just like you. We have been review bombed and we're sitting at a 3.1, but I feel like with how in detailed we went with Gappa, we should get at least 1 5-star. So if you guys could leave us a 5-star, that'd be great. If you don't have an Apple device, which I don't blame you, I don't. That's actually very much a lie. The script says that I have to let you know that I use a MacBook to do this podcast and edit. I do a little editing on the podcast. It's mostly Rex, but I do some editing, and I use a MacBook to do that. So that's a lie, but you can rate us on Spotify. That is not a lie. If you want to stay up to date with all things Kaiju Conversation related, you can follow us on Twitter at KAIJU_CONVERS. If you don't have Twitter, you can follow us on Instagram or like us on Facebook. If you're like me before podcasting and you don't have any social media, lucky you. You can email us at kaijuconversation@gmail.com, all lowercase, all one word, you know the drill. And as always, we'll read your reviews on air for everyone to hear. We also have a Teespring store. Eventually, we'll have original artwork, but until then, you can sport our awesome logo on a t-shirt or maybe even on a coffee mug. If you'd like to chat with us one-on-one or other people that have similar interests to you, check out our Discord server. Recently, there was a conversation about, let's see here, what do we have in our lovely Discord server? We were actually talking about Zombie Self-Defense Force because I brought up that I was watching it. So it's a great community full of great people. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you can be notified anytime we upload a video. Sometimes we post exclusives to the channel like bloopers for episodes or minisodes talking about news or other subjects. We also have an interview with Mechagodzilla designer Jared Krzyzewski on the channel. I probably butchered his name and I deeply apologize for that. And a huge thanks to Rex for editing all of these episodes and all the other content we upload. His links can be found in the description below. Definitely check him out. Along with Rex, we'd like to give a huge thanks and shout out to Danny DeManna of the Godzilla Novelization Project for his amazing vocals on our theme song. You can support him by following him on Twitter at Danzilla93_GNP or visit his website, GodzillaNovelizationProject.com. And a huge thanks to Gratton Conwell from the podcast Giant Monster BS for composing the music for our theme song. You can support him by following the podcast on Twitter at Giant Monster BS or on any podcast platform under the name Giant Monster BS. And with that, we're going to wrap things up here. So thank you guys so much for listening to us ramble on about Gappa and how much it didn't really bring to the table on any front. I had to get a jab. You know, I always have to loop back around to having the jabs. You know, I spiral back into our same old jokes.
It's over.
See, I told you I had to bring it back.
No.
And I found a way to bring the ring joke back. Look at that. I bet you thought I forgot about doing that. I bet you were like, man.
I was really hoping.
You were like, man, we're not going to have a ring reference. And then here we are in the last few minutes. Boom. You can't escape it.
Why do you do this to me?
Because Godzilla vs. Kong exists, and it's an awful movie.
What? What'd that have to do with it?
I just had to bring up the fact that Godzilla vs. Kong is an awful movie.
I mean, you're not wrong.
And with that, I've actually achieved all of our typical shticks when it comes to these episodes. So now it's been a full Kaiju Conversation episode. So with that, I can officially say thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you, Rex, for dealing with my insanity here. And with that, we're going to remind you guys to please remember, life's too short to not talk big. Bye, guys.
Bye.
we are set, we are in debt. There's nothing to sweat. Life's too short now, baby. And not too big now, baby. Conversation. His name's Elijah, baby. And also Rex now, baby. We love those kaiju, baby. And you will too now.